Well, Jack, we're in an older era of Survivor.
Yep.
But some legends never die. In the new era, we have Jelinski, a player that was voted out episode 1, but his legacy continued beyond that first episode. Jeff brought him up every single week. Here in Survivor Cook Islands, we have Billy Garcia, who was voted out in episode 2, and it seems like he remains the main character of the show even after his departure. Welcome to Survivor Analytics. I'm your true expert, Clyde. I'm here with the voice of the people. We got Jack. Jack, how's it going?
What's up, party people? That's your open is just, hey, Billy and Jelinski's names come up after they've been voted off.
No, they're impactful. Some people are voted out and they are never heard of ever again. Like, did anybody talk about Sekou after Sekou went home? Not really.
I mean, that's fair, but it is interesting how these things stick around because this one is jarring. Apparently her name isn't Christine. Apparently her name is Candice. I was convinced that Candice's name is Christine for this whole episode, but so my notes say Christine every time, so I apologize for that. But when Candice finds out about the Billy story, she looks terrified. I'll point that out.
Oh, I think we interpreted her response very differently. I thought she was blushing.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Preposterous, dude. I'll say this. I love classic Survivor. This episode reinforced that for me. This challenge, fantastic. Actual surviving and hunting, excellent. Vibes are good, my friend. I am all in on Cook Islands.
Oh, okay. I had the opposite opinion. I thought this was the worst episode of the season so far. I thought the premiere and the Billy Garcia episode were definitely better.
Okay.
I don't know. I think just looking back on this one, I watched this with my dad, which I told you before the show.
Yep.
Once the credits rolled and they showed Mark Burnett production at the very end, we looked at each other and we both kind of agreed that not a lot really happened this week. I felt like there weren't many crazy character moments. The vote resulted in someone going home that literally had one confessional, I think, the entire episode. I know nothing about Cecilia, despite her lasting this long.
This is the experimental era, right? We talked about this last episode. It's a 40-minute episode, 20-person cast, right? We're dealing with 18 people 3 weeks in, and we're dealing with the tribe swap. And so I feel like when you add all of that stuff together, the limited time and the number of people and conversations that you have to capture, it does get harder. That being said, the fact that we really never see anything from either of the people who are on the chopping block this week is interesting.
We see something from Becky. Like, Becky takes an active strategic role earlier in the episode, and we saw that conversation between Becky and Yul last week that you forgot about.
Yes. Like, Becky's playing the game, for sure. But after the challenge, when her name is on the chopping block, I thought for a bit that she was on Exile Island. I forgot that Candice had been sent because Becky is not shown on camera for most of the post-challenge episode.
Yeah, it's a lot earlier when the swap initially happens, and then she disappears for the second half.
Yeah, she seems to have no agency in this vote at all. She doesn't seem to be trying or talking to anybody or even being filmed. All that to say, there's a lot going on here. Parts to love, parts to dislike. It's weird having a reset of sorts 3 weeks in.
We'll definitely talk about the tribe swap because I have my qualms with the swap occurring this early in the season.
Well, so let's run really quickly through everything ahead of the swap because it happens pretty darn early. Basically, there's two things that happen. The I2 tribe is still talking about Billy after tribal. Thought you'd like that.
I appreciated it. There's a scene of Ozzy menacingly cutting a coconut, similar to how he cut Billy out of the game.
And then we get an extended scene of Cowboy continuing to not shut up. And this one really dates the episode and the season because he's talking at length about the Iraq War. I'm not going to lie. Maybe I should know this. I was alive for it. I'm not great with modern history. I'm not sure how many years into the Iraq War this was.
I'm not sure either. The discussion around the Iraq War is not the war itself, but he tells a story of a Vietnamese family that immigrates to the United States, and then he tells them they made a mistake because their kids are going to get enlisted by the army.
Yeah.
And it's very on brand for Cowboy with all of the other things that he has said this season. The main takeaway from that entire interaction is that Brad hops in confessional and says, Cowboy never shuts up. He's being annoying around camp. Early on, I thought we were headed towards a Cowboy elimination. It feels like the edit has been setting up Cowboy as this easy boot for 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
And then the tribe swap hits and the polar opposite happens where he's in the power seat somehow.
Cowboy's getting an interesting situation here where I think people are willing to just drag him along. I am getting the sense that Cowboy is an early GOAT, right? 13 seasons in. I don't know if that term is in the vocabulary yet. I'm sure you know. I don't know if it would spoil anything to say.
I think it enters in season 5.
So he's so annoying. He seems pretty uninterested in playing the game very hard. He says at one point later in the episode, outside of the context of the game, this is a pretty cold line. I don't like the scheming of man, says Cowboy. The scheming of man could be the subtitle to all Survivor, right? This is a show about man scheming. It's Shambo-esque, right? He's not a threat. He's annoying, but that's an okay combination to keep around. And I think it's interesting now that after this swap, Ozzy and Cowboy are on the same tribe. I think if Ozzy had been on the same tribe as Cowboy to start, he would see Cowboy the exact same way he saw Billy. This is an annoying guy who doesn't shut up, doesn't seem to contribute. Let's get rid of him.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Cowboy's such an odd character to analyze on this cast because he also gets an insane amount of screen time. I would need to go back and check the numbers.
A lot.
But there's an argument that Cowboy might be the most prominent character through the first 3 episodes.
Oh, I think so. 100%.
On one hand, makes sense because he's creating chaos. But on the other hand, I don't know if I really need another segment of Cowboy annoying the other contestants. I would have rather used that time to learn something about Cecilia before she goes home.
Well, I guess we'll see. And don't say anything. I know you know. But maybe this turns into a major plot point, right? Maybe this is me in the same mentality that I gave Shambo, that I was convinced she was a puppet master, right? Maybe Cowboy's annoyingness builds into a major twist of the season, right? I don't know. But, so Cowboy's chattering. I2's still talking about Billy. We get tree mail that there's a big challenge to come that will be brains, not brawn. And then we go to a challenge. And I wrote down challenge because Jeff says, come on in, guys. He takes back the idols. He says, get your first look at the new I2 tribe. Billy voted out last night. I paid close attention because the camera did go to Christine, whose name is Candice.
Oh, okay.
And Candice is utterly emotionless because she feels nothing for this man.
Well, no, she's in shock. That's what it is. It's like seeing a car crash happen. You don't know how to respond in that moment. She's pale in that moment. She can't catch her breath. She has a pit in her stomach. She doesn't know what to do with the loss of Billy there.
Well, so while she's in shock, Jeff says, drop your buffs. And multiple people go, are what? Enough people on this cast don't seem to know the game of Survivor that they're like, what's a buff?
Well, I can go back and look. I'd be curious to see how many people on this cast applied versus were recruited by production. I gave those stats back in Samoa after the final tribal where we found that the 2 people that applied for the show voted for Russell. So I'd be curious to see what the breakdown is for this cast.
I think that'll be worth tracking down. But so let's talk about the tribe swap because segregation is over. Hooray. It's about time. The swap is conducted in 2 stages. First, the men and women are split up and they draw rocks. 2 men and 2 women at random are selected to be captains. The captains are Cecilia, Parvati, Brad, and John. Oh, there's a Cristina on this cast.
Yeah, there's Cristina the cop.
That's why I've been having trouble. Because for some reason I got Cristina and Candice mixed up.
Yeah, there's no Christine, though.
There's no Christine. Shout out to my mom, whose name is Cristina, and she hates it when people call her Christine.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll make that the title of the episode.
Oh, please do. Oh, she'd be furious. So it's a schoolyard pick, except they have to balance between the tribes. And only men can only pick men and women can only pick women. Do you want to run through the breakdown and then talk about problems here, or how do you want to do this?
I don't know if we need to cover like the exact breakdown of who is on each tribe, but I can give you an overarching look at each one, where you have the new Rero and the new I2, which is weird because I2 lost immunity last week. Like, you would think that they would keep Rero and Puka since those are the tribes that are fully intact. But they kept the white people tribe, and then they disbanded the Asian Americans. So not very tactical on production's end. So your new Rero, it's 2 members from each tribe and then 3 contestants from Hiki, which makes no sense because Hiki only had 4 players. So you would think you would do 2 Hiki on one and 2 on the other. Then over on I2, you have 3 Puka, 3 Rero, 2 original I2, and 1 Hiki. So Sundra is the only Hiki member on the new I2 tribe.
Right.
I know that's a lot of information, but there are some important alliances that stick together. Like Yul and Becky came together in the pre-merge, and they get assigned to the same tribe.
Yep.
Rebecca and Stephanie work together in the pre-merge. They go together to the next round.
Yep.
Other than that, it feels kind of like a random mosh pit of people. We don't know who's necessarily aligned with who until they go to tribal council. But were there any big takeaways in the arrangements there for you?
Well, I do want to point out that after the female and male captains have picked their respective mini teams, the 2 tribes are decided by egg squishing. Each one of the captains is given an egg, and when they crack it, it explodes in a color, either red or blue paint. I2 is now red, and Rero is now blue. Or were those the colors already?
I think those were the original colors, yeah.
Oh, so it's just stupid. We just got rid of 2 tribes. I thought the egg squish was kind of fun. And as they're doing this, if you go back and watch, the music in this section is the most like discount, non-copyright, as close as you can get parody of Pirates of the Caribbean's theme music.
No way, really? I did not notice that.
You know, the whole da-da-da-da, 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 that whole thing, it's basically in there. It's really, really close to the Pirates of the Caribbean theme song.
What year did Pirates of the Caribbean come out?
That's a great question. Let me think about that. 2003?
Oh, okay. So it would be copyrighted then.
It might actually just be the Pirates of the Caribbean theme song. Yeah, I mean, honestly, my thoughts are, I said that with a New York accent. My thoughts are, it's a weird mix of chance and skill, right? Captains are at random, but you have to pick from these certain tribes in a certain order, or you can't pick from your own tribe, right? The limitation isn't you have to pick a certain number from each tribe. It's you can't pick from your own. I don't know. It's this odd mix, and whenever a swap or the mergatory or anything where you do teams happens on Survivor, I go back and forth with whether it's better to have true random teams and say whatever happens, happens, right? All the Meat Boys are on one tribe. Or is it better to let it be completely up to skill and let 2 people who can look at everyone else pick, alternating, and just balance based on those people's opinions?
It definitely balances the tribes better with this structure, but I just don't know if there's a lot of skill or strategy behind it because there has not been a lot of interaction between these tribes through the first 2 episodes. So when the captains make their selections, I think it's primarily based on physical strength.
In terms of like opportunity for strategy, there are multiple times in this pick where the person picking goes, well, I have one option, Jeff. I guess I'll take him. Right? Like, if I can't pick the guy on my tribe, then I have to take Ozzy, right? That literally happens to Yul.
I would have been okay if they just did a random draw, because I felt like it's a 45-minute episode. We probably lost, 8-10 minutes with each contestant walking up and selecting someone from the remaining group.
And everybody has to dap up, right?
Yep.
And every single guy has to dap up every other guy. What's up, bro? And it's that very early 2000s dap up, right? There's like the hand and the fist on the back.
Well, that's just the culture of the cast, you know? Like, outside of Jonathan and Cowboy, it feels like every other guy on this cast is a Meat Boy. Like they're all 6 feet tall and shredded.
And Jonathan wants to be a meat boy so bad.
Really?
I think so. I don't like Jonathan after this episode. I'll say that.
You're not a fan of the fedora? He's our second fedora-wearing contestant that we've covered on this podcast.
Who else?
Russell wore one, right?
I completely forgot Russell wore one. I was thinking Ben might have worn one in 46. That seems like a Ben move.
We covered the assignments. I want to talk about the actual timing of the tribe swap because Survivor production catches the viewer's attention preseason saying, we're doing an outlandish twist. We're going to divide the tribes by race. And then they do a swap after just 2 weeks, after 6 days on the island. What did you think about the timing of this? Do you wish they rolled with the original tribes longer, or?
It almost feels like they would have been better off either doing just the original tribes for like 2 days and then being like, just kidding, we're not going to do Survivor segregated for a week. We're not going to let you get halfway into strategic alliances, or ride this out until we're at final 12 or 14, right? Give us 4 more eliminations and then do this. I don't know. It's so early. The fact that we're essentially starting a new season of Survivor, right? There's a few alliances. There's an idol in play. All of the rewards that they've won are being equally distributed, right?
So what was the point?
The 2 tribes are splitting everything, for one. For 2, some people have been going hungry and without fire for nothing. Hey, guess what? Everybody's got flint now. We lost 2 people, but now, hey, 2 tribes of 9, that's a starting point in my mind. I mean, it's a stunt, right? It's the experiment to get people in the door, and that's it.
100%. And
yeah.
I don't know, it just feels a bit inauthentic in a way where, granted, it's 2006 and maybe my expectations are too high for production, but I thought they wanted to do this season originally divided by the different races to explore different cultures.
Hey. Production went for the flashiest, most controversial thing they could do and get away with on national television. They didn't care about cultural exchange. Let's be extremely clear. I think it's less of did they want this to be an actual, like, anthropological experiment, and more of like, if you're going to do all these tiny tribes, let the tiny tribes ride a little bit longer.
I wonder what it was like on production's end, too. I'm curious to see if this was always the plan, if they were going to roll with those tribes for just 2 rounds and then swap them up, or if they did it for 2 and then said, this is kind of a bad look. We're worried how people might perceive this, and if we run with this gimmick for too long, then we could get into some serious trouble. Let's just swap them now before things potentially get bad.
I mean, that's not a bad point either. That's a good point.
I was against the gimmick to begin with, and this whole thing just reinforces it as a PR stunt.
You sure you want to put your flag in that particular sand, buddy? You sure you want to say I was against the segregation experiment? Controversial take, pal.
I'm pretty confident in that one. I know people come to this for the hot takes.
I'll say this. I'm ready to move past it, right? And I'm ready to enjoy what is effectively now a fresh season of Survivor with the diversity of a new era game in the old era with good challenges. I think that's great.
If I'm recommending this season to someone, I might say you can just start on episode 3, because what information are you really missing?
Yul has an idol, and that's it.
It's Yul has an idol, and you won't understand the conversations about Billy when the episode opens. Other than that, I think you can probably hop in at this point, and you won't be missing much.
And you might get that from the previously on.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So maybe this is the starting point. I think this should be the episode title, is Start Here. Tribe swap is done. Tribes are splitting up. A couple of notes right off the bat. Candice finds out about Billy. She is in shock or terrified, depending on how much you believe that Billy and Candice were actually a thing. Cowboy and Flicka immediately hit it off because they're both lunatics.
Well, can I say something about the Candice situation? Because I need to defend Billy here.
Okay.
So you might notice at this point in the season, they had just swapped into the new tribes. Candice is on I2, and when she joins I2, she takes the red paint that Parvati squishes from the egg and puts it over her face.
Right.
Like right underneath her eyes. And I have a theory that she did that intentionally because she was blushing when the Billy comments came up. And she did a great job. She tried to deflect the question. She didn't want to make it look like she'd lost a valuable ally in the game, because if she admitted that, then that could potentially hurt her winning chances at the end if she makes it to the final tribal council. You don't want to walk in front of a jury and say, I lost my closest ally in the second episode of the season. They're not going to respect you for that. So she put on the camouflage, hit the blush, and I think she navigated out of the situation successfully. So I want to give a lot of credit to Candice as a player for keeping that relationship under the radar, both to the players and to the viewers. I think I was fooled for a second. But love wins.
Love wins. That's the takeaway. Oh, my God. Okay. So, that being said, we've got an animal shot.
You have no response at all to my entire monologue?
No, because it's absurd. It's absurd. Good for you for your theory. It must be fun, dancing on rainbows and moonlight like you do off in Dreamland. But here in the real world, we've got an animal shot, and it's crabs. Okay. We've got a bunch of crabs crawling around on some rocks. And then guess what? All the dudes on Raro are on the rocks because they're building something. And Parvati is getting started. The one thing I know about Parvati is that she's a great social player, and we see her on the hunt right now. She's like, got a lot of dudes. I'm a flirt. And she starts flirting. And boy, does she.
It's incredible. I wrote down Parvati goes on the flirting run of the century. Great quote from Parvati. I want to lure him into my web, chomp, and suck his blood. So there are times where I feel like you might watch this and think Parvati's just a flirty person, but it seems like she's doing it for strategic purposes. She wants to build these connections with people outside of the original Raro tribe, and she has her eyes set on Nate specifically. Nate goes, he catches this octopus, and she starts working him immediately. She says things like, oh, you should have more of the meat. You're going to need it. She's kind of egging him on. She makes a comment about Nate's pants falling down. And this going into the season that Parvati is a legend of Survivor. There's a reason why modern players still put her as a contestant that they look up to in their bios.
Yeah.
And I honestly forgot how compelling she was in confessional. I think she's the most engaging confessionalist of this entire cast so far.
I mean, I think there's a couple of people whose commentary and insights I actually really appreciate. Parvati is one, and Yul is the other one. I think Yul's confessionals and the way he talks in tribal and stuff, I'm a big Yul head. I actually literally wrote that down.
Yul head?
I'm a Yul head, dude. I'm a big Yul fan. But yeah, I think Parvati she's exciting to watch. It's a big game in a different way, right? The game she is playing is, from our perspective, pretty bold, right? But on the island, it doesn't seem tactical at all, which is brilliant. And so I'm excited to see her relationships with these guys develop and watch her spider her webs.
It's interesting too, because I don't know if we've seen any other contestants on this podcast that have a similar play style.
I do not think we have.
She blatantly flirts with the other guys in front of other players, and it doesn't seem that sets an alarm for anybody else. No one else is saying, oh, Parvati's getting in good with the guys. It seems like the girls like her as well. So she's in a solid spot over there on the Raro tribe. I think you made a good winner pick.
Did I pick her?
You did pick her after episode 1. But I feel like that it was a bit of an inauthentic pick because you just knew the legend of Parvati.
I mean, let's not discredit what might be my first winner pick that actually hits. This could be huge for me. So let's not.
I'm just saying, it's not the same thing as you blindfolding yourself and throwing the dart at the board. You peeked a little bit.
So Nate catches a big-ass octopus. And being the animal shot guy, I had to look this up. This is actually really pretty interesting. So he catches this octopus. He shoots it with the spear gun. It wraps around him. The guys have to pull it off of him. Fascinating stuff. I've done some research. Octopus cyanea, also known as the big blue octopus or day octopus, is an octopus. Here's what's interesting about this octopus. And I'm going to say the word octopus a lot in the next few minutes, so I apologize.
I'll mentally prepare myself.
It's massive. It's a very big octopus. I mean, we saw it. It was wrapped around him. It's big. Octopi typically can lift things about 15 times their size. Octopi are very strong.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
It did take a bunch of guys, and it was stabbed to get it off of Nate. Here's what's really interesting. It's called the day octopus because where most octopi are nocturnal, it's diurnal. And so, essentially, this is the one octopus that is normally out in daytime and is accessible. It can change its color at will. One researcher observed it changing its appearance 1,000 times over 7 hours.
Oh, well, that makes sense because I think when Nate catches it, it's a paler color. Maybe that's the color it turns once it dies, but it blended in a bit with the water there.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. A couple other things here, just because I've read a lot about it. Typically, when they mate, when they reproduce, they die. I didn't know that about octopi. After they go through their mating season, the males die within 2 to 3 months, and the female dies once the eggs hatch. Kind of a bummer, but traditionally, Hawaiian fishermen would use a cowrie shell lure to catch them, so they are edible. I mean, like, that was spot on. I thought I had one more interesting fact in here. They have toxic saliva, so Nate was pretty lucky. Like, it could have, I don't think it would have killed him because the toxin that kills a fish is not typically strong enough to kill a human. But at the same time, like, this could have been really dangerous. Pretty cool stuff from Nate. So this ends Animal Corner for now.
So this isn't necessarily an animal shot. I thought all this information was leading up to, and the octopus represents, fill in the blank. These are just fun octopus facts with Jack.
Yeah. What more do you want from me? You wanted, like, symbolism? No, he just caught an octopus, and it's a cool octopus.
Well, that's typically what you do with every other animal shot that you've discussed for the last year.
But, to be fair, most of the animal shots don't involve the animals getting stabbed and eaten.
Okay.
So, that's all I've got. And then there's a whale.
No comments on the whale?
There's no symbolism with the whale because we go from the whale into the immunity challenge.
Before the challenge, there's a couple things that I do want to hit on at the new I2 tribe.
Yes.
One of them is that Yul tells Becky that he has the idol.
Yeah.
And I know you said earlier that Becky was not very active strategically in the second half of the episode, but we're seeing early on that she's starting to play that second-in-command role, similar to Charlie from 46, where she has Yul, who seems like a pretty bright guy. He's shredded, and he has the immunity idol. So it seems like Yul could be the perfect shield for Becky. The question is she willing to flip on him at some point? Because when Yul tells Becky this information, it doesn't seem like she wants to spread it to anyone else. But how did you feel about Yul sharing that information?
Given the power of this idol, I don't think he should share it. And I don't think he really needed to cement his bond with Becky. They were already close. Like, did this really accomplish anything? I don't know.
And with the tribe swap, I think you're also forced to pull your allies closer to you because there's so many new people around.
Yeah, and so, I mean, and I guess that's why he did it, right? But I'll say this. I would love to hear more from Becky, especially in the context of it's 2024. Asian American women, young women, do not thrive on Survivor. It's a group that has been notoriously voted out very early. Shout out to Helen for being my favorite first episode or second episode boot, who was a winner pick of mine, right?
She went home episode 2. I'm trying to think of some of the other Asian American women that we've covered. We saw PG in China. She made a deep run.
She did well.
But I'm trying to think. I think PG is one of the few examples. I don't know. I need to go back and look at the seasons, but
it's notorious enough that I've had people send me memes about it. This is a trope of Survivor, is Asian American women not getting their fair due, and women in general, right? Especially early on when Meat Boys are favored. And we hear a lot about Becky being a threat. And yes, this alliance does make her a threat, and she makes some moves here, right? She brings in Jonathan, she brings in Candice, but she's not talking. Like, I don't know if we get a confessional from her.
Yeah, we see her moves without the insight behind it.
When I say we don't see her after the challenge, I don't think we see her. Or she's in a group shot, but we're not seeing her having conversations. It's focused on Jonathan and Yul trying to save her. not on her playing.
Which is a shame because she's the person that initially brings that group together.
Yeah.
And with that, one thing I will criticize Becky for is that I don't know if it's the best idea for the original Rero and the original Puka players to align, because those are the two tribes that did not have to cut any of their numbers early in the game. I think it would have been better if Puka looked to align with one of the other two tribes.
The weaker tribes.
Yeah, to knock out some of the Rero contestants, because your worst nightmare right now is that Rero takes control over on the other side as well, because there it's 2 Puka and 2 Rero.
Right.
So you really don't know what's going to happen in that other dynamic. But with that said, she was still able to form a majority alliance either way.
And so they have this 4, Jonathan and Candice joining with Becky and Yule. And Jonathan says, oh, I can get Flicka. And Flicka will be our swing, and we can just control her. Let me say right here, I hate how Jonathan talks to Flicka.
Yeah, it's a bit uncomfortable to watch.
It is so controlling and condescending and dismissive. I mean, she puts up with it with far more grace than I would be able to. I mean, she doesn't tell him to just fuck off, which, you know, I'm sure she's thinking, right?
I don't know if I got like a condescending vibe from it. I'll say it was icky because he was like kind of holding her hand at that one point. I'm like, okay, Jonathan, let's have a little space here. And I do think he was being controlling, but Flicka's also transparent in the sense that she kind of doesn't want to play the game. Like, she has a confessional where she says, I'm not here to make alliances. I'm just trying to make friends.
Insane, by the way. Yet another moment where I said to the TV aloud, why are you here?
Well, it's a symbol of old school Survivor. Not everyone that goes on the show is a fan that wants to deceive people. Some players want to go on and honor their name and try to play the game with integrity, which, spoiler, rarely ever works out for literally anybody in Survivor history.
Right.
So it seems like Flicka's in this more for the experience rather than the game itself. And Yule talks about it at the Tribal Council, that dichotomy of the two different approaches to Survivor. So
yeah.
Jonathan's on the polar opposite end of the spectrum, where he's here to put the pieces on the board. I think he literally compares Survivor to a chess game at one point.
Yeah.
He wants to win, and I can understand, even though I disagree with his approach, I can understand the frustration of attempting to play a game that someone does not want to participate in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like trying to play tag and somebody playing freeze tag and somebody won't freeze, right? That's frustrating. That being said, I find his manner of speaking to her gross. That, I think, all sets up the challenge. Shall we go to the challenge?
Yeah, I'm all set to head to it. This is a recurring challenge on Survivor.
Have
we seen this one before?
We have not, and I love it. Does it have a name?
I can pull it up right now, but you describe the challenge to the listeners.
Okay, this challenge is what I like to call Sandman Chase, because the two tribes are chained together, and every member, or each tribe is chained together separately. They are on opposite sides of essentially a track, right? A oval in the water. So it's about knee-high water, and everybody has a 15-pound sandbag. The goal of the game is to, going in the same direction, both teams going clockwise, catch up to the tribe ahead of / behind you and tackle one of their members. First team to tackle somebody on the other team wins immunity. The trick is, because you're carrying this heavy weight, if you get tired of carrying a heavy weight and stomping through the sand, you can step out at any time. You just have to give your sandbag to somebody else on your tribe. I love this challenge. 10 out of 10. Fantastic. What's it called, Clyde?
It is called Hot Pursuit.
That's a terrible name for this.
I'm not super high on this challenge, and it might be because I've seen it across multiple seasons. I can tell you right now how many times it's appeared. Oh, man, it's been in 4 U.S. seasons of Survivor.
That's it.
So we'll come back to this at some point. But I think it's one of those challenges where you know pretty early on who's going to win once one tribe starts to catch the other. And it's a very Meat Boy-centric challenge. I think there's literally a point in this where all of the women are out of it. I thought it was an unnecessary component to require the tackle at the end of the challenge. Like, I think they could have just tagged them and called it there. What's going to happen? Like, they're going to fight off the tackle and then run all the way around the course and catch them on the other end? That just seems like fireworks at the end of the challenge to me.
I2 doesn't do very well. Cowboy in particular struggles. And essentially, when it becomes clear that I2 will not be able to outrun Rero, Yule says, let's just fight him. Which, excellent mentality, Yule. Big Yule head over here. So Yule tries to fight them off, but while he's wrestling with Ozzy or somebody, Jonathan just squishes Cowboy down into the sand.
Oh, I think that was a JP that does it.
Oh, yeah, because Jonathan's on Cowboy's team. And Rero wins. And here's where things get interesting. Exile Island is still in play, although the idol we know is not there. And the twist now is whoever you send to Exile Island will be there for Tribal. And essentially, not a part of Tribal. Can't be voted out.
Yeah, you're gone for the rest of the episode because we don't see Candice.
We don't see Candice. I don't know if we'll see Candice on the island at all. So it adds this interesting layer of not only do we get to take somebody out of the equation for this tribe, but we're kind of protecting that person.
Yeah.
And so that being said, with this current tribal breakdown, if you as a member of Rero got to pick, who would you have sent? Would you send Candice?
Like, yes, there's the benefit. If Candice is my number one and I just want to protect her at all cost, you know, I feel bad that she lost Billy. We don't need to push her down in the sand even more. Then I would send her to exile, right?
Maybe Billy's waiting for her on Exile Island,
Oh,
you know?
And that's why they didn't show it. They didn't want to show that love story even more than they already highlighted it.
It's like the fantasy suites in The Bachelor.
I don't know. The real tough thing here is that there's still votes on the table, right? And if you take Candice out of the equation, now Puka has control of the tribe. There's 3 Puka, 2 Rero, 2 I2, and 1 Hiki. I feel like the consensus decision here should have been to remove Sundra because Sundra's the only Hiki person there. Then you kind of give everybody else an opportunity to fight it out.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who was campaigning to save Candice because Jeff asked the new Rero tribe. It looks like they talked for like 20 seconds. I bet in real life they had a full discussion about it. And then they just yell out Candice. So,
and Jeff says, oh, that was unanimous.
How was that unanimous, though? I don't know if I believe that. How is Cristina or JP, people that have never talked to Candice before, agree to this plan?
JP knows Candice.
Are you thinking Adam? You're thinking Adam, right?
Oh, I've got JP and Adam mixed up.
Oh, Jack. We're going to set a deadline for you when you will know this cast. Is final 12, is that a realistic goal? That you can know 12 people by then?
Look, we're at 18. Things get much easier. I mean, it'll be easier at 15. It'll be easier at 12. And by 10, I'll know them all.
When can I expect a 100% hit rate where you see a face and you know?
At 12, you could quiz me.
Okay, we'll run.
That seems fair.
We'll run a little pre-show quiz.
Once a third of these people are gone, then I can do it.
How did you feel about the Candice selection, though? For me, there were so many factors at play. It was difficult to really get a read on it.
I like and I can understand if you're somebody who was not on Sundra's tribe previously, and you have several of her tribe mates on your tribe, right? You might not want to make those waves, but taking her out and forcing that chaos into the other tribe, making them draw those lines, or at least making them think about drawing the lines along their original alliances or original tribe, I think that's a good move. When they go back to camp, when I2 goes back to camp, they're like, why did they pick Candice? And everyone's like, I don't know. Nice to meet you. Like, I'm still getting names down, and you're asking me why the other tribe made a tactical choice? Nobody knows.
Would this twist be better if Candice went to exile and came back for tribal? Because I'm okay with this gimmick for 1 week, but I think I'll be a bit more annoyed by it if it continues every other week in the pre-merge.
I think this gimmick would have been more interesting if the tribe swap happened later. If alliances were further developed, lines were drawn, groups were smaller, this Exile Island in the format it is now, where you miss tribal, would be really compelling.
It's also way less compelling because you know it's only safety for Candice. Like, there's no idol there for her to find. I think that's part of the reason why we don't see her for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
hopefully next week we get some segment of Candice hanging out on Exile.
No, I think we literally get one shot of her walking to Exile Island.
I want to see her search for the idol, knowing that nothing's there.
We come back to camp. We're with I2. We never see Rero again, but we also never really see, Becky or Cecilia. Essentially, there's two camps. There's the Yul, Jonathan, Becky, Candice camp, which is now thrown into chaos because they've lost one of their members. Then there's the Cowboy, Ozzy, Cecilia, Sundra, Flicka camp.
And Cowboy and Flicka are really on the periphery of that group. The core is Cecilia, Ozzy, Sundra, with Cowboy and Flicka as the swing votes.
Cowboy and Ozzy start the idea, or at least we see them. They talk about it first. Cowboy throws out Becky's name to Ozzy, and Ozzy runs with it. Flicka and Cowboy are in this, but they're not that in it, right? I mean, Cowboy seems pretty in it. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's funny, too, that the guy who's so morally against deception in Survivor is the one that wants to lead the vote against Becky.
In the end, he doesn't vote for her.
If I was Ozzy, I would be so annoyed at the end of this episode knowing that Cowboy backed out of his own idea. But side note, terrible read on Cowboy's end. I understand that he doesn't have the best relationship with the other Puka members, but it seems like Becky and him had a solid friendship. We never had any scenes of the two of them beefing.
We don't have any scenes of anybody on Puka saying anything to him other than, hey, stop making racist jokes. Nobody is visibly frustrated with him. Nobody was talking about voting him out. Alliances were being formed without him, but he wasn't specifically being targeted or ostracized either.
So with this big decision, Cowboy and Flicka are operating in the middle, and we get scenes of Jonathan and Yul working their magic because they need to pull both of them onto their side in order to make this vote against Cecilia happen.
Yep.
And the approach is very different, where Yul kind of caters to Cowboy's interests. Like, Cowboy's very focused on physical strength, and Yul talks about Becky's performance in the challenges, and she's a very upfront player, someone that will be honest in her approach to the game.
Right.
Meanwhile, Jonathan makes the strategic argument to Flicka, and that does not seem to land at all. He talks about the pieces on the chessboard. Because on one hand, for me, as a strategic viewer, that's where my mind would immediately go. If I'm pitching to someone why they should vote my way, I would immediately run with the strategic argument. But I want to give Yul credit here for catering his reasoning to the actual individual.
I think Yul can do no wrong. Let me start with saying that. Big Yul head over here. Have I mentioned that? Yul knows that Cowboy isn't here for strategy. He isn't here for complicated stuff. He's here for, a simpler game. He keeps it simple, right? He does the right thing there. On the flip side, Jonathan does a couple things wrong. The first is talk to Flicka like she's a child. Again, I'm so anti-Jonathan after this one. It's just disrespectful. But on top of that, he has this whole, if you go with them, you're going to be on the bottom and they're going to take you out. He makes it threatening. He makes it, if you don't do what I say, they'll get you. And I think he could have boiled it down. A, said it nicer. B, boiling it down to not this threatening, you're on the chopping block, but just, look, you can be on the inside here or the outside there, and we'd rather have you on the inside with us. He really convolutes it on top of being demeaning. I thought Jonathan was blowing this vote, to be honest.
There was a moment where I thought the same thing, because Cowboy and Flicka get together and they agree that they don't trust Jonathan at all.
Yeah.
Based on the way that he's spoken to the two of them. So when they ultimately side with that group, it seems like it was primarily Yul's argument that drew them over there. But you tell me what you think about this. Going into Tribal, I had no doubt in my mind that the Jonathan and Yul contingency would win this battle, because we see almost nothing from the other side. I think there's maybe one scene of, that group of Ozzy, Cecilia, Sundra walking along the beach with them and pitching the idea. But other than that, we don't really know what their core argument is, other than Becky's poor in challenges, we got to vote her out. So the edit felt a bit unbalanced to me, where one side got way more screen time than the other.
Oh, I think this back half was really poorly edited. We never really hear from Cecilia. We don't hear from Becky at all. Again, I've said that twice, but just reiterating. I don't think Sandra speaks. I thought the vote was up in the air going into Tribal because I was wondering, do they have this much screen time as a red herring? And is it going to be that Jonathan has screwed himself talking too much? And we're going to see it happen.
And I don't know, it's a weird edit too, because last week, Ozzy felt like the main character of the episode.
Yes.
Like he was the strategist that threw the challenge on purpose. He's proven to have some strategic acumen here, yet when his back is against the wall, there isn't a lot of content there for him. But yeah. I'm good to head to Tribal Council, where honestly, I do not have many notes at all.
The only thing I have to note is that, and I don't think we noted this in the last time when we talked about how powerful this idol is, you can use it up to Final Four. It's a second life, but you can't use it on somebody else. That's the thing I had to note here. Because I did have a thought of, since you use it after the votes have been read, could you use it then to, could Yul use it to save Becky?
Oh, yeah.
But no, it's just for yourself, I believe.
So it gets you far in the game. This is the point in Survivor history where the final two format is established. So you really only need to survive one vote here.
Yeah. And so that's all I really have written down. I thought people were very well spoken, but again, this felt like a first Tribal Council, right? This felt like episode 1. Everybody's saying, oh, we'll see where we all stand after the vote, right? We're all getting to know each other. We're starting fresh.
The common episode 1 tropes, right?
Yeah. In episode 3.
Your final vote is 5 on Cecilia, 3 on Becky. The only people that are voting incorrectly are Cecilia herself, Sandra, and Ozzy. So I'll be interested to see how Sandra and Ozzy work to potentially finesse their way out of their situation. Like, luckily, Flicka and Cowboy are still there as 2 people that they could potentially pull onto their side. Or if the rest of the alliance gets sick of them, they can always point the finger at those 2. So,
and I'll say this. I don't see Cowboy and Flicka being consistent with their alliances at all, right? I think the others, right, Yul, Becky, Jonathan, Candice, totally will stick together and work together as long as they can. I can see that happening. I think Flicka and Cowboy have absolutely no regard for an alliance and will just vote whichever way. I mean, Cowboy suggests Becky and then votes with her.
Well, I think it's also tough because neither one of them have attended a Tribal Council so far. So I think there's a chance that they end up being very loyal players because they don't want to play the game and they just want to remain loyal to the contestants who they gave their word to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think it will be one or the other. I don't think we're going to see them starting to suddenly play a tactical game. I think they're either like, I'll go with you this week and you next week, or ride or die. You will tell me what to do and I'll just do it.
The argument you make to them can't be the strategic one moving forward. It has to be something like, oh, Jonathan's hat is annoying. I'm not a fan of the fedora look. And then Cowboy will say, you know what? You're right. I'm with you. Like, you need to kind of make the emotional play to pull them onto your side. But Cecilia goes home. Do you think Cecilia comes back and plays again? There's 5 people on this cast that come back in a future season.
No, she barely played in this one.
Well, you are correct.
And I'll throw this out too, by the way. When we're going through the vote and everybody's saying their little piece at the voting booth, like half of them say it's nothing personal, it's just strategic, because there's no personal bonds whatsoever.
Yeah.
But worth noting, Ozzy says when he writes down Becky's name, you've not made any effort to get to know me. Like, Ozzy has a personal thing against Becky. So we'll see if that shows up again, but it did make the edit.
I don't know. We talked earlier in the season about background characters, and Cecilia seems like a nice person. I would have loved to learn more about her on the season, but when it comes down to it, she's presented as a domino as far as the edit is concerned, as someone that gets knocked out of the game. So it's a shame she does not come back. We can head into winners and losers. Where do you want to start?
Let's go winners.
Winners, we might have the same person. Do you have Yul, a fellow Yul head?
Why, yes, I do. Big Yule head over here.
Yep, he's the primary force that convinces Cowboy and Flicka to work with his group, and by doing so, he keeps his number one ally in the game. I also like that he's aligning with Jonathan, even though you're not a fan of Jonathan.
Good shield, though.
Jonathan's a shield, someone that will make a lot of noise, and the two of them are the only two people that attended Exile.
Yep.
So I think that's something that could bring them together at some point, even though Yule does not tell Jonathan about his possession of the idol.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't like Jonathan, but I like that alliance for everybody involved, right? Like, I can totally respect that. I can see that working out for them. It will be interesting to see long-term how the original tribes make it to the merge, like what permutation of the original 4 tribes end up in the final tribe. And so, yes, this alliance is comprised of people from the unscathed tribes, but it could end up being a totally different configuration, like all of their allies or former tribe mates on the other side might be gone. So we'll see. But yeah, shout out to Yule. Well played. Positioned himself as the voice of reason. All of his confessionals, very articulate, very smart. All of his conversations with people are respectful and straightforward, and he's playing the game without appearing sneaky or devious or untrustworthy, but still playing the game. That's a tricky line to walk, and I really appreciate how he's doing it. So
he's a straight shooter. He's the anti-Drew who just competed on Jeopardy, fun fact, today. I want to watch that episode with my dad later on. But he's not going to throw analogies into his confessionals. He's going to tell you how it is and make the moves that he needs to.
Yeah. Who's your loser?
My loser is Sundra, who I see as the player positioned on the bottom of the I2 tribe.
Clyde.
If that tribe goes to another tribal council, I think there's a good chance that Sundra would go home because her and Ozzy were the two left out. And since we're in the pre-merge, I think they're going to favor the Meat Boy, as unfair as that is. And I think Sundra could be on the chopping block next.
It's another eclipse, dude.
Really? Okay, our second eclipse in a row.
Because, I mean, I wanted to say Cowboy, but he's too annoying, right? Even though in the next time on, we see him seemingly killing some baby birds. He's irritating, but he's so irritating that I think he'll be fine. Where Sundra, similar to Cecilia, is a quiet woman in an era of the game where that is a crime, where you are voted out easily just for having those qualities. She got screwed by the tribe swap. The rest of her original tribe is on the other side. And so she has no strong allies, and the ones she does have lost this vote. And so she's in a lot of trouble. So, yeah, hate to see it, but like at the same time, we don't know anything about her because not enough confessionals in between all the Cowboy segments. So,
do you have a honorable mention?
I do. My honorable mention is John Edward Gray.
Who?
John Edward Gray was a British zoologist born in 1800 who died in 1875. He discovered the big blue octopus, Octopus cyanae, in 1849.
Oh, good for him. A big accomplishment, really contributed to this season. I don't know if we've had any other historical figures earning honorable and dishonorable mentions. I would need to go back and check the history books on that one. This might be a first.
I definitely dissed James Cook a couple weeks ago, but sometimes you just got to do a little deep dive, and that's what I did today.
I appreciate it. I feel like all of our marine biologist listeners ate up that segment.
Shout out to all of you in the South Pacific.
I'll give a quick dishonorable mention. I had a couple contenders here. I thought about giving it to Love again, just in memory of Billy, but I feel like that's a bit repetitive. I can't do that 2 weeks in a row. I'm going to give my dishonorable mention to Modern Riz. I think that Parvati's playstyle is so fun and entertaining in old school Survivor. And as much as I hate to admit it, I don't know if this specific version of Parvati would translate to the modern game. I don't think you could walk out onto the island and immediately start flirting with every guy on the tribe without coming across as like an immediate threat.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I really appreciate about Parvati. I think she played in like the perfect era for this gameplay, because we saw even in the most recent seasons, once you have a couple that gets together, they immediately are perceived as a threat. that's just when you have two people coming together. So if you have one person flirting with like four others, then I feel like all the sirens will be going off.
And let's say this, my sense of the game is Parvati establishing flirting as a tactic.
Yeah, there's other players that do it other than Parvati.
But she's the one known for it, right? Like, and so it's kind of like, who invented the skyhook? But who do we know for it, right?
That's fair.
And so, like, I think her impact on the game in that sense, yes, she played at the right time, but I wonder if had she played, somebody would have done it eventually, right? But I think the game after her owes a lot to her.
And we'll see that as we get through all of Survivor history. But thank you for listening this week. Next week, we'll cover episode 4 of Survivor Cook Islands. Hopefully, we'll get some more octopus facts from Jack. Or maybe it'll be a different animal next week.
You should be so lucky.
Okay, we'll catch you then.